Welcome to the Apostolate's Peace of Heart Forum Classic Series, where hundreds of key personalities in the Church share insights and wisdom from classic spiritual literature. These experts are interviewed by the Apostolate's founder from a unique family perspective, so that the spiritual insights shared can be applied to our everyday lives and give us peace of heart. Let's now join the discussion.
I want to welcome you to this series we're doing on preparation for total consecration to Jesus through Mary for families. This is a book we put together and featuring St. Louis de Montfort's writings, Pope John Paul II, Scripture, and we're now into the part on knowledge of Mary. This takes you through different phases. We have Father Hugh Gillespie of Montfort Missionaries to guide us in our meditations today. Father, thank you for joining us, and Father Bernard Geiger, God bless you. And well, let's just dive right into it. This knowledge of Mary, both of you are on fire for Our Lady, and so that this show should go real fast. So, Father, what are your insights here?
Okay, well, it's important to again remember that this movement builds upon and continues the movement we just made of knowledge of self. I say, well, what do you mean knowledge of self going to knowledge of Mary? Likely what's going to happen when we take some time with this period of knowledge of self is we're going to discover some positives about our lives that we've forgotten about. Almost, like a hidden treasure that I've neglected and didn't develop. We're going to discover some unfortunate realities about ourselves. And sometimes those are simply going to be all of the missed opportunities in my life. You know, the chances to have done something that I really just dropped. We'll find examples of our sinfulness and our willfulness, and we're likely to discover that, I know a lot less about my life than I thought I did. And I know a lot less about my faith than I thought I did, even though I've been living it with some vigor for however long. This is precisely the point Montfort wants us to be at, because what this does is we recognize all of a sudden, over the course of my life, how much goodness did I let pass through my fingers and lose? How many opportunities to serve God just passed me by? And one of the things we discover is, we're very weak and we have a hard time holding on to and preserving the good we've received. And so we need we need a place where we can trust that we put this and it doesn't get lost. It's one of the ways Montfort has of saying, now we need to look at Mary. And so you note how he's going to connect what he says about Mary to what we've discovered about ourselves. We find that our motivations are mixed and colored, and that even when I'm trying to be generous, there's this pride that's in there, and that comes with me. And so I find that even my goodness is colored, and it's never as good as I'd like it to be. And Montfort's going to say, you flag that, you remember that. Then, we're going to be looking at ourselves, and we're going to realize that I really don't clearly understand the presence of Jesus in my life anymore. And there's so much about him I haven't come to learn and haven't come to know. And I've tried so hard. And Montfort's going to say, good, flag that. See, for Montfort, these are not necessarily problems. These are simply realities we deal with. But now he's going to say, it's precisely to discover and surface all of this within us, that by my own force, by my own ability, I am limited in my forward movement. And it's not the end of the world to recognize that, however humbling it might be. But this is crucial for Montfort. A true knowledge of self should surface genuine positive potentials in me and genuine positive realities, but it should also surface these places where I persistently and regularly fall short. And now Montfort is going to turn around and say, this is where we're going to look at Mary. Because I really desire to know Jesus. I really desire this freedom that the gospel holds out to me that I can't quite claim. I really desire not to drop the ball on these opportunities for goodness that come my way anymore. But I keep dropping it. Montfort says, now we take time with this woman who is so crucial to us. And that's what this week is for. Because if we really want to know Jesus, Montfort is going to say, let's look at Mary. If we really want to preserve what God has given us, Montfort's going to say, let's turn to Mary. If we really want to overcome the mixed motivations of our willfulness, Montfort's going to say, this is where Mary comes in. And so right here you can see how we step out of knowledge of self, ready-made to engage what Montfort has to say about Mary. Now, before going any further, a caution. Again, simply as we look at the text that's going to face the reader when we come to this part of the process. And, you know, for example, I'm just arbitrarily opening to the 22nd day on knowledge of Mary for the moment. And you see that we have a long citation from the Mother of the Redeemer, Redemptoris Mater, by Pope John Paul II. And again, it's theologically dense. And then we have a lengthy citation from Montfort's True Devotion to Mary. One of the things we really need to be very, very careful with here, okay, more so than in the previous week, because when we're looking with ourselves, we're not necessarily going to fall into the trap of merely theoretical knowledge. Oh, here we can. Because what the Pope says is going to be interesting, and we're going to puzzle over it. We're going to say, what does that mean? Again, the point here is not that we're only catechetically enriched. The point here is not that we're getting an intellectual understanding of where Mary fits in things. That's good, that's necessary, and that's very, very helpful. So I'm not saying don't do that. What I am saying is, and see, I'm conscious of this because I'm an intellectual myself. And I greatly enjoy theological reflection. The danger, however, though, is theological knowledge, theological reflection, catechetical knowledge, knowing things about Mary is not knowledge of Mary. And that's the key here. The point of this week is knowledge of Mary. That doesn't mean we're necessarily going to feel a lot of things inside us, but it means we have to do more than work with our heads. It means prayer to and with and through Mary really has to be a part of this time. It means what we're reading and what we're reflecting on has to really work at connecting the person of Mary to the realities we've uncovered in our lives and our desire to grow in Jesus. And that really is crucial for this week in particular.
Father Bernard, knowledge of Mary.
Well, when we talk about knowledge of Mary, and we're saying we want to get beyond head knowledge, but the heart knowledge, the heart knowledge is obtained through faith. And to really know Mary means, first of all, you need to discover her love. It's when you begin to get to know her love and to believe in it that you start to really get to know Mary. And we need to experience her love. And that means that we're going to have to grow in our faith that Mary not only knows us as Jesus does, but she also loves us. And she loves us with an incredible love. And my own experience is I never really started to know Mary until I started to believe that she loved me. That's when I began to experience her as my mom. And I used to read that in Maximilian Kolbe, and I'd say, well, it's wonderful. I wish I could feel that. But it wasn't until I realized I didn't really believe in her love, and I started to tell her, yes, I do believe you love me. That's when I got to know her. And to experience her presence, and to experience her real care for me. And it made all the difference in the world.
You know, I think Mary's role, again, we look at her as a mother, and just thinking of mothers, what is a mother to us, and to really realize that she is our mother. And Pope John Paul lost his mother when he was 9 years old, and Mary really became his mother. And so we could look at Pope John Paul and how he truly loved his mother, even though she, she loved Mary. That was his mother, and he just brought her out to the world. But she can, as a mother does, she's gentle, and she can bring us along. And I think this is to take the time. The rosary is important here, because we're trying to gradually work you up to a full 5 decades of rosary a day. And there's more to the rosary than meets the eye. And the family rosary is a very important thing. I remember Father Patrick Peyton, great Marian priest, and his apostle was the family rosary. I said, it wasn't the rosary? He said, no, it's not the rosary. And he strung me out. He said, it's the family rosary. And there's power in that, but we don't even eat dinner together anymore. Well, we can, even because a lot of times the husband is driving home. They might have a 2-hour commute one way, and the kids are young and they have to get to bed at a certain time. The husband doesn't get home till they're in bed. But maybe he could shut off his cell phone, and they would say, no matter if he's home or not, they say the rosary at 7:30. So he can say the rosary at 7:30 in the car as he's driving home with the family, if he can't, But there's something about the rosary that will draw you into it, and it's far more than logic. It works. My wife Gwen said it's what has protected our family, is the family rosary, and it's not easy. Kids don't want to pray. But that act of prayer, even if it's distracted, is an act of the will that we're moving through. And now that we have all these DVDs and pictures of the rosary, we have children that come here, families that come here, Father, every year, 4 times a year, 1-week programs. And we say the rosary every day, but one time we say it as in a sort of bonfire. And Father Kevin calls the little ones 4 years old to 8 or 9, and they sit around his feet, and he says the first joyful mystery, and there might be 200 kids there, but they know the mysteries, they know the subtleties of it, and new people come and their mouth is wide open. They can't believe these little kids who know the second joyful mystery, the first joyful mystery, what it is, and they can't believe it. But it's because they've been brought up in a family that is saying the rosary, and is using these videotapes, and these kids drink it in. But there's a power. So I'm just asking you, please make that commitment to say your family rosary during this time, and ask Our Lady to help us to understand her more. And then just share like you said before, Father, just at dinner time, share the reflections, It'd be a day off because the parents have done because normally the husband will probably do his at work or before work, and the wife during the day sometime. They won't do it together, but they'll come together at dinner time, hopefully, or before the kids go. So, Father, what other insights does de Montfort have on knowledge of Mary? He wrote a whole section on this.
Yes, he did. Let's back up a little bit, and I sounded out some notes about how knowledge of self leads into knowledge of Mary. Mm-hmm. This is really important because even without giving us a strong emotive feeling, what it does is allows us real touchstones to our real lives, mm-hmm. for where this woman can make contact with us. And so, for example, when I find that, I really can't hold on to the good things I've been given, one of Montfort's favorite ways of talking about Mary is she's the treasury of God himself. Mm-hmm. And so God himself trusted his greatest treasure, Jesus, into her hands, and he lost nothing of his dignity in Mary. Think about that a moment. Yeah. Jesus took flesh in Mary and lost not one shred of his divinity. Jesus was raised by Mary and lost not one scrap of his goodness. Mm-hmm. Everything was completely, perfectly, marvelously preserved. And Montfort says God's treasury is our treasury too. Mm-hmm. And so the goodness of my life, the blessings I've received, the love of my children even, all of these things I can say, Mary, keep these for me. Mm-hmm. Because my heart is like a sieve, and these things fall through. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I have a point of contact with Mary, this one to whom I can have the same kind of confidence that God had. I can give you that which is most precious to me, and I can rest easy, knowing you do not lose it, right. Knowing you do not drop the ball. Mm-hmm. Another way Montfort will speak of Mary is that Mary manifests her Son. And what that means is I recognize that, you know, I've been working so hard to get to know Jesus, and there's still so much.
Right.
And Montfort will say, that's because you haven't turned to Mary. And you haven't spent enough time with her. And you haven't learned her. Because the closer you draw to Mary, what's going to happen to you is your eyes, which for some reason could only dimly see before, the scales fall from them and they will be able to see the glory of Jesus. And so the more we come to know her, the more Christ himself becomes manifest in our lives. Next, we look at Mary and we say, you know, I don't even know how to begin pleasing God. And, you know, I try to do charity work, but, you know, I do it so people can see me. I'm doing a friend for my buddy, but, you know, there's part of me that says, yeah, but he's going to owe me. And, you know, I'm conscious of the way I color and I taint even the good that I do. And I'd like just to be able to offer God something that's good. But I don't know how even to do that. But I turn to Mary and I'm like, well, you know. You know how to give God this kind of offering. You know how to purify motivations. And so I can turn to her. And, you know, a really important piece here. Nobody knows better how to navigate the tricky waters of domestic life than Mary.
Yeah, the mother, though.
And, you know, and that's, you know, this is another real point of contact, especially if you're talking about family consecration.
Right.
You know, Mary has a domestic wisdom. Mary has a wisdom of the house and a wisdom of the family.
Yes.
And to say that the Holy Family lived a life of perfect love does not mean to say that there were never disagreements among them. It is to say that these disagreements never became sinful.
Right.
Because human beings have different minds and different wills and differences of opinion, and that's natural. Human beings have different tugs on their lives that pull them apart and bring them together. And that's not easy to manage. Yet Mary, the one who guides the wisdom of the whole, you know, of the life of the Holy Family, becomes then this presence where we can say, is there a lack of peace in the house? Are we having difficulty relating to one another? This again becomes a point of contact for us.
Right.
And you notice how the issue is when we can find places in our real everyday lives which are openings to her and points of contact with her, this manner of then coming to know Mary and making her a steady presence in our lives becomes much simpler, much easier, and it gets us to Jesus that much more quickly.
And she'll take everything we do, like you said, has motives and it's imperfect, but that's the power of this consecration. We make this act, she takes the little we have, and now it's hers. And now she purifies it. And that has a power going into the mystical body of Christ. So that we talked about it in other shows. But that's no small thing. By giving ourselves to Jesus through her, we could be helping a starving child in India. Those actual graces go out, and Our Lady takes them to those who need them.
Yes, they do. Those actual graces go out in that way, and those very near-to-hand graces become stronger. Because again, if we're talking about her amplifying the goodness of my actions, then it's even the love I extend in the home. Becomes deeper and richer because she teaches me and she shows me and she purifies my attempts to do that. And so it's twofold. It's the one hand, there are these effects I can't even anticipate elsewhere in the world by what I've surrendered to her. And there are the effects I can't even anticipate but are very real where I'm living because they happen too. And you know, it's this beautiful nearness and out of this nearness, this distant good that can also happen simultaneously.
Yes. Well, I think again, I remember Cardinal Pio Loggi telling me, he was the Apostolic Nuncio in the United States and then became Prefect over Education. And he said, Mary is so central in the Church. I mean, we think she's not, but he said the Church without Mary would be like a body, like a skeleton without flesh on it. She gives flesh to the church. She gave the body and blood to Jesus. She's there in the Mass. She is not a peripheral part of our faith. And this journey now, this consecration, will start to open this up for us, this relationship with Mary. And like you mentioned, that stone, you just like you jump in that river of Mary, you know, just immersed in her. That's a beautiful image, you know. Yes. And so this is what we're doing in this consecration. And if we're renewing it, we're just going deeper with it. This is our time to think about Mary, to talk to Mary, to ask her to help us to understand this, to live it, and to talk to the family. And the synergy with the family can really, the Holy Spirit can really work in that area in such a powerful way.
And there's one particular biblical text that really is good for this particular period, and that's the story of the wedding at Cana. And a lot of times when people read that text through a Marian lens, people zero in on Jesus worked his first miracle at Mary's initiative.
Right.
I want to bracket that for a moment and not talk about that.
Okay.
Mainly because it's very common. And when we zero in there, we miss a couple other important things about that story.
Okay.
The first is, it's Mary who notices the shortcoming. The neat thing about this story is nobody comes to Mary and says, help us out, there's no wine.
Right.
Nobody else is aware of the lack, except perhaps the servants and Mary.
Yeah.
Mary notices, and she doesn't stand passively by. She takes initiative. This is the kind of presence she has in our lives.
Right.
She doesn't just wait, just like a good mother, she doesn't just wait for us to ask. If she sees a need, she moves on it.
Right.
But the remarkable thing in the story is somehow after she speaks to the servants, it's not just that they go to Jesus, it's the way they go to Jesus. Because if you really pay attention to the story, it makes no sense. There's a detail in there that is completely stupid. And that's this. The servants go to Jesus. Mary says, simply listen to him and do what he says. Yeah. And Jesus says, fill those jugs over there with water. Now, stop a second. If you're the servant, you're thinking, what I need is wine.
Yeah, right.
This guy that I barely know, that I don't know necessarily.
Yeah, right.
And this is the key. They don't particularly know Jesus that well.
Because he hadn't been manifested.
Exactly. Yeah. It's telling me I got to fill these 30-gallon jugs up with water. I need wine.
Yeah.
Now, and to really catch the beauty of the story, you have to catch this ridiculous detail. And yet the servants do it. Somehow the way she brought them to her son allows them not to laugh, but to respond. And they don't just respond, they fill the jugs to the brim.
Yeah.
They can't get any more water in them. They completely fulfill his word. This is the effect of Mary on us. Then it gets crazier yet. Jesus says, now take some of that water over to the steward and let him try it. And again, picture yourself, you're the servant.
Yeah. He said, guy's going to throw me out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to lose my job here. And the neat thing about the story is, when does the water change into wine? And apparently it's when it touches the lips of the steward, because he tastes wine. But we don't know before that. But the interesting thing is the miracle doesn't happen, okay, not just without Mary, but without the willing obedience of these servants who listened to her and who heard in her something in the way she indicated Jesus that allowed them to respond in this kind of a way.
You're right. They had no reason to do it.
It's absolutely remarkable. And this is the kind of change Mary can produce in us. Notice, she speaks to the servants. Now, the other cool feature about this story, though, is, the bride and the groom get the blessing. The servants see the miracle, but the bride and the groom receive the blessing. And what did they do? Nothing except for one very important thing. They made it a point to make sure that Mary and her son had a place at the table. And that's a big thing. But you see, when we talk then about inviting Mary into our homes, into our families, this catches a real dimension of what that is. Often in ways we don't immediately recognize. Sometimes we're the servants. Sometimes we're mom and dad and we're exhausted because raising a family is not easy. And there's no gas in the tank. We have no more wine to give. And she's the one who helps us.
Right.
And she's the one who allows us to respond to what Christ would have us do. Sometimes we're the couple. And we're not even aware at our own celebration that the wine's running out. And without our even realizing it, because we've involved her in our life, a difference is made.
That's right, Father. You know, I think this is a very special time now that you have to set aside reading. And these meditations that we have are filled with truths, and so often you can just pick up on a paragraph and meditate on it. Like Mary is the woman of the Eucharist. Well, you can meditate on that and talk to Our Lady about it. So this is your time, your one-on-one time with Our Lady, to ask her to help you to understand her better. So please set aside time to do the readings. You don't have to read everything, but it is important to just set that time aside. So please share this with your family now at dinner time, and come together once a week, see the videos, share your insights. Thank you. Go to our website now, familyland.org.